everybody. Welcome to Barely Filtered. This is the first episode since we had a 2-week break, which a lot happened over 2 weeks. And for those of you who are new here, for the first 10 minutes of every episode, we talk about what's going on in Aurora's life. And this is where I dish out all of all the good stuff. Most of the people in my life remain anonymous unless I'm punishing you and you're my sister or something. But you guys are getting the exclusive information. I do not share this on my Instagram. I do not share this anywhere else. I don't have a Patreon. I don't even know how to work one of those. Substack, whatever everybody else is doing. I'm not that techie. So as you know, I am dating, and I'm trying to date more intentionally. Turns out it's not like something that you can just intuitively do. And I know this now because of trial and error. And, there's masculine energy and feminine energy. And I think maybe I have a little bit more masculine energy, especially right now in my life where I'm taking care of a household by myself and kids. And I think that can be a little abrasive for men sometimes. And my first usually few dates go pretty well, and then everything goes super fast with the men that I've dated. And now in retrospect, when I think about each one of those, I'm like, oh my God, how did you ever think that was going to work? One guy hated kids and was so rude to my kids when he met them. And that I was like, okay, I know that this is not going to work. But before that, I didn't. It's you're kind of blinded by what you want to see, or I've been. And so I'm doing it much more intentionally now. One other thing that I have learned is that the minute you get sexual with somebody or intimate in any way, and by you I mean me and a lot of women, I think, we cannot control our hormones. We are wired where now this person who maybe you had no feelings for before and no reason to even like them, now all of a sudden you are a stage 5 clinger koala bear. And that's kind of how I am, I've realized. So I need to be very specific about when and with who I get sexy with. And that's not really my personality to hold back. Usually I'm in the moment. I'm fun. What can I say? So, but I don't sleep with anybody until at least a month and a half, 2 months in, which turns out that's not enough time because you really don't know somebody until a little bit later. So I'm just going to back up. I have been seeing somebody. One of the tools that I am now using, and this is from this dating coach well, one of my friends is a dating coach, my son's friend's mom, actually. And she's been on the show before, actually. You should find the episode. Her name is Christine Pate. Christine has a program called Attract Extraordinary Love. And so she kind of has been giving me tips on how to not lose myself in the process. That is what I've learned as an adult in the dating world, is it's easy, especially when you are an intelligent person, and most problems in your life you can solve through your mental capacities and really trying to dissect a situation. You cannot do that with dating. You literally cannot. It'll drive you crazy. So one way to avoid that, I've learned, is to be dating multiple people at once. And it sounds counterintuitive to what I would think is the right thing to do, because I've always prided myself on being a really one-man kind of woman. I'm very monogamous. When I like somebody, that's all I want. And the whole time I was married, I never once even considered or looked in another man's direction because it just is not an option in my brain. And I like that about me. But with dating, it becomes a problem because I put all my eggs in one basket. And then there's so much pressure on this one thing working out, which, let's be honest, most likely it won't. There's more no's than yeses. And so I'm setting myself up to be disappointed. And I've had to pick myself up from that disappointment several times, only to realize weeks or months later that I never would have been happy in that relationship, and why did I let myself get so down about it? So a few things I'm doing: dating multiple people, and that means going out on dates with people that I'm not excited about. So coffee dates, there's no reason to commit to an 8-course dinner. Learned that. So I'm going out on coffee dates. I'm dating somebody, and by dating I mean just we're not exclusive, we've just been hanging out, who was... What? What? You're not exclusive. No, I told you I'm dating multiple people. I'm dating multiple people.
Okay.
I mean, we're not exclusive. Would I like to be exclusive with him? Probably yes, but I'm doing these steps intentionally so that I'm protected. So I'm dating multiple people. I like one more than everybody. I'm not hooking up with any of them except this one. After on our 4th date, we did get like a little bit intimate. And then he went away. And the day he went away on a trip for a few weeks for work. And I'm not going to lie, the day after, I was feeling really low because and that just reminded me of like my wiring. I need to remember that when I let my guard down with somebody and then let's say they're stranded on a desert island, they don't have internet, and this is literally what happened. He was flying over the Pacific, there's like no internet, and he like hadn't texted me in a few hours, and I was like, hated myself. I was like, I can't believe every time I let my guard down with somebody, then they just pull back, and then he ended up texting me, and then he didn't say goodnight to me, and I was like, well, this is just great. This like if I let these guys know my thoughts every moment of the day, they would be like, you are so batshit. And the thing is, they can feel your feelings. They really can. I believe that. Like, I don't care what part of the world you're on. Like, if I am pining over you, you are repelled by me. And I feel like that's just science. So, because, I'm coming from a place of lack. I'm coming from a place of like, oh no, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to be worse off somehow, which has never been the case. Ladies, if you think of any relationship that has not worked out for you, do you think your life would be better off had it worked out? And the answer is always no, never. So I'm just having faith in that, but I'm remembering these few things. Don't get intimate with somebody if you are not fully prepared for them to pull back. It's also just like a thing men do, I think. Which is weird because like in my marriage, if I had sex with my husband, I was guaranteed he would be really nice to me for a little while. But I find with dating, that's not it, actually. It's like, I think they can sense our clinginess, like energetically. And for me, you cannot ignore it. Like, I can feel it. Everybody can probably feel it. And I think that is a little repelling for men. So my thing is that I can't get sexual or intimate with a guy until we know each other very well. We are in a committed relationship and exclusive, because I frankly can't handle it. And that is what I have learned. So I'm going on coffee dates with multiple people. There's one guy who, like, oh my God, if this guy sends me another photo of a country club golf course, I'm going to jump off a bridge. He's really super sweet and really nice, and I'm getting coffee with him. But like, I think he's just a little too preppy for me. I can't with the. I have a bit of a type, and it's not like a super. I don't like really preppy. I feel like it's just too vanilla. Although it doesn't mean they're not interesting people. I think maybe this is why I'm going on multiple dates with these people, because you can't judge a book by their cover. You can't judge a book by their loafers. So I'm giving these guys a little bit of a shot, and it's also like diversifying where my brain is. So I'm not thinking solely about this one guy and that it needs to work out with him. So that is where I'm at with the dating. One thing I will say about the guy that I like is like he wants to make a lot of future plans, and he's been he hasn't been he hasn't been love bombing me, but he's definitely a gifter. Like, that's his love language. He's super sweet and thoughtful. He's the one who sent flowers here. If you listen to one of my other episodes where I have a big bouquet of flowers the whole episode, those are from him. He's the one who, I don't want to give too much away, because I'm also trying to not talk specifically about certain people, because I don't want them to hear and then be like, know that I'm talking about them. Although he will know, because he's the one who sent me the flowers. Anyway, so I feel like I'm not really sure where he's at. the communication over text is really not there. With girlfriends, you just feel like you're with each other with the way you text, and it's back and forth. And I think when you're in your head a lot and talking to somebody that you are kind of excited about, our text banter is really not there. I actually like that, though, because the guys who I've been so fast and furious and burned to the ground with, the text was like all day long. So now that's actually a red flag to me. The fact that me and this guy like barely understand each other over text, that's a green flag. I'm liking it because it's interesting in person. We connect very well. I think that is also a lesson I've learned. You can't judge somebody by how they communicate with texting and with words, whether it's a generational thing or whether the way they read and write and like interpret language. There's so many reasons why somebody could sound a certain way over text and you're totally misreading it. But I'm trying to take things very slow with this guy, and I think that's just where I'm at with that. But it feels good. It feels good to have multiple. It feels good to have it feels good not to have all my eggs in one basket. And it also feels good not to be like super obsessed with somebody and feel like if this doesn't work out, I'm going to be worse off. So that's where I'm at, and I will keep you guys updated. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this and dump me. So we are going to pivot now and go right into our guest for today. We have, and by we, I mean just me and my personalities, but we have two women on today who started this amazing organization called the Kind Campaign 15 years ago, specifically targeting bullying and bringing this topic to schools. And they're just doing amazing things, going to schools and spreading. They're just doing amazing things. They've created a documentary called Finding Kind with a lot of people who are doing amazing things in this space. They talk about The Anxious Generation, a book that I need to read because everybody keeps bringing it up to me. Also, the woman who wrote Queen Bees and Wannabes, which Mean Girls is based off of. They are just bringing the conversation to schools around bullying, how technology plays a part into this, and whether or not you are a parent or you are an aunt or an uncle. This is just, it's a universal conversation that affects everybody and can help you even understand maybe how bullying had affected you when you were a kid. So let's welcome them. So I have Lauren and Molly here. Thank you guys so much for joining us on Barely Filtered.
Thanks for having us.
We're so happy to be here.
So let's just jump into it. I want to kind of back up a little bit and let's talk about like your origin story. How do you guys know each other?
So we met at Pepperdine. We were in film school together there, actually. And the summer going into our senior year, we sat down and we were kind of just catching up about our summer. And we were friends. We had done some projects together. We had a big group of mutual friends. We were close, but not like best friends. Like a lot of people assume we like grew up together, and that's why we did this together. But we were just catching up and kind of had a conversation about experiences surrounding bullying. We'll get into that in a minute. But from this like conversation over lunch and kind of shared experiences, we looked at each other and we're like, we're going to do something together. But we just met at school and kind of getting into film and having kind of similar interests.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I do feel it often is that way. Like the person who is not really your best friend, but like comes into your life for a certain reason because you guys both have like it's part of the course you're supposed to take in your life.
Yeah.
It sounds like you guys have really made a big difference in a lot of people's lives too. I mean, I was just listening to the trailer on the way here, or maybe it was a trailer for the documentary you guys made.
Okay, yeah.
And I was like becoming so emotional just because I think all women have that experience of
Totally.
What another woman can say to you can cut deep on a level that I think would never hurt as much from a man. Yeah. What is that? Do we have any psychology behind this that you guys can share with us?
Yeah, I feel like, obviously what we do within Kind Campaign, it's, specifically targeted to girls and women in female relationships because of exactly what you said. Like the way in which we experience these things does impact us so deeply. In no way are we suggesting that boys and males don't also go through this, because we've had a handful of assemblies that boys are a part of, and it's clear that they have their own experiences, and I think they don't necessarily have the tools to be able to express their emotions or like talk about those things as openly as females. But we have found it is a specific thing that females go through, and I think it starts with the insecurities that we all innately have, and when someone makes a comment, like the way in which that can impact a female is very different than what a male experiences. But I don't know that we have psychology or any.
Well, that's actually such an interesting question. Nobody's ever asked us that, and so I'm like sitting here thinking about it, and I'm like, well, for me, like the female experience is so specific, and like we go through such specific things at such a young age. Like I was just talking to a friend the other day about like how much more of a pain tolerance women have in general. Like we get waxed and sugared and laser hair removal and all that. I'm like, guys could never. And I had this light bulb moment. I'm like, yeah, because we've experienced pain every month since we were 12. Like it's just like a part of us. And so anyway, that's a tangent, but there's so many layers of that to like a girl's experience that I feel like requires so much like thought and emotional, like it's just such an emotional experience from such a young age. So I feel like to not feel supported by other women who like are going through that shared experience just hurts in a different way. And also from a psychological standpoint, definitely like specifically adolescent girls, the way their brains are developing, like friendships are the pivotal thing from like that age of like 12, 13, 14, those when we're going through puberty. I was just reading a book, The Anxious Generation.
Yeah, my friend keeps telling me I have to read that.
Oh, it's incredible. And there's a whole chapter specifically that just deals with why like traumatic situations in friendships, whether it's cyberbullying or things happening at school, specifically are harder for teenage girls. And they are because of the way our brains are wired, because of how important those like friendships are.
Like it feels life or death to us.
It does.
It
it's
does.
like it's everything.
It
is especially when you're that age.
Yeah, and you don't have the intellectual resources yet. Not that like, okay, so I'm single and I'm dating, and I'm learning a lot about the psychology of women, trying to attract men and competing with other women. And even as we get older, it's like we have like 12,000 generations behind us of women who, our survival depended on being nice to men and like having a leg up against the other women. Because it's like we're like one, we want one man, but a man can kind of do multiple women at once and kind of be okay with it. But then ultimately like be monogamous. But like we have to be the one that's like chosen. This is like what we think. And I feel like even from a young age, we have that feeling of competition where we need to like be liked by other women, but I don't know if it has so much to do with men, though. I don't. You guys obviously have seen Mean Girls, and that book. What's that book that it's like that it's based off of?
Queen Bees and Wannabes.
Queen Bees and Wannabes. Yeah, that was
Rosalind Wiseman. She's actually in our documentary.
Oh no way!
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, do you feel like there's certain women who are more inclined to be a bully?
I think if anything, like through our experience, we've been doing this for 15 years. If we've learned anything, it's just that it's not black and white. Like there's no formula to this. Like if anything, and we're more often than not we're dealing with like elementary through high school age girls, and like one of the professionals in the film says, we hurt people because we are hurt, or we bully because we've been bullied, and not that creates an excuse for someone to treat someone badly, but yeah, it's just, I think, we're all just like a concoction of your childhood trauma and how you were brought up and the examples that you've been, raised with, and your specific personality and chemical makeup. Like there's such a array of things that, create someone in their story and how you're able to, handle conflict. And so I think for us, it hasn't been as much like figuring out like why it happens, because it's not really, there's like no way to really answer that. It's how do we like just look at the situation and do better.
Right, because it does happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what is the mission of the Kind campaign, and how does it empower people who might be bullied to deal with it in a better way?
Yeah, so we have, like you mentioned, we have our documentary, Finding Kind, and that's really kind of where, going back to the origin story, that's really where it kind of started, was having a conversation about doing that. And it was like, okay, how are we going to do this? We're going to set off on this road trip across the country, and we're going to meet people and hear their experiences, because at the time, this was not a conversation at all. This was swept under the rug. If anything, it was expected as this rite of passage that, you know, we all have to go through at some point in our lives. And so that's kind of how it started. And then while we were on that road trip, we were like, okay, how are we going to tackle this? Like, how are we going to create change? And so that's where this idea of doing an assembly program for girls really started. And we kind of test piloted it on this, you know, road trip while we were, you know, shooting footage and trying to find out, like, does this impact everyone? Mm-hmm. Is this prevalent across the country? Does it only happen in certain, you know, areas, or is it everywhere? And what we came to find was that it was universal. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter, you know, how many people are in your town or your city. It happens, and it hurts everyone.
Poor neighborhoods, rich neighborhoods,
yes,
all of it.
Every, you know, in a very universal way. Like, we all feel the same things because of this issue. And so that assembly program kind of was born from figuring out, okay, how can we, you know, address the issue? Because again, it wasn't really addressed at the time, but then focus on creating change. And so that's still the core of what we do today, is we do assemblies in schools all over North America. We're actually going to England in a few months, where we, you know, obviously talk about what's going on, but then really focus on creating that change. And so we have different interactive activities that are all very simple. We have something called the Kind Pledge, we have a Kind Apology, and a Kind Card. And all three of them, again, are like simple in nature. They're these little sheets of paper, but they're all so powerful, and they really empower the girls to use their voice, to be the ones to create change. And often in the assembly, it's like this light bulb moment goes off for the girls. At the beginning of the assembly, we ask 2 questions before we, you know, start anything. And the first is, have you ever been impacted by something that another female has said or done to you? And I mean, every single time, every hand like shoots up.
Wait, why do
like,
I have Mean Girls in my head?
I was
Like,
gonna
have
say,
you ever
it was
been
a poll for Mean Girls,
personally?
but most of these girls have never seen Mean Girls, so
Have you
they're
ever
like,
been
this is
personally
fun.
victimized by
yes,
Regina George?
Exactly. That was the inspiration. But then we follow that question up with, have you ever said or done something that has negatively affected or hurt another girl's feelings? And it's pretty incredible to see. Like, at first, there's some hands that kind of start to go down.
Right.
They're
There's
a
so
little
much
nervous
shame in that.
Yeah, to be, you know, open and vulnerable to say, yes, I have. But then when they see, like, oh, okay, we're here together, we're telling the truth, you know, all the hands are up for that second question as well. And we really do that to create this safe space for them to be able to come together and to have this conversation. And you know, we're not standing up there pointing the finger at anyone. Instead, we're really uniting them in the fact that, yes, we've all been impacted. We also all have said and done things that have hurt other people. And so because of that, everyone in that room has the power to change their experience, whether it be, you know, during their time in school, or, you know, when they grow up, because this is something that doesn't end when you graduate from high school or college. Like you mentioned, like, this is something that, you know, we're still impacted by things that people say and do to us. So by the end of it, because of the, you know, kind of environment that we create in the room with the girls to feel comfortable opening up those activities, specifically the Kind Apology, where we give them the opportunity to apologize to someone. You know, and to see that moment of vulnerability of them standing up and walking across the room and handing an apology to someone that maybe they haven't spoken to in 2 years, you know, to then start a conversation of healing and reconciliation it's really powerful. So by the end of the assembly, I mean, Lauren and I often are looking at each other and we're just like, what is happening? Like, we wish everyone could just be a fly on the wall, just observing these really beautiful moments. Especially now, you know, like we mentioned, we've been doing this for so long, and to see how the reaction from the students, you know, with everything that's changed since we started this with social media, social media and cyberbullying, and just like the world that we're currently living in looks very different than the world that we were living in when we started this. And
I think it's such an important, like, that kind of dedicated time, like assembly time, is such an important thing to have on a regular basis for girls. I remember I went to an all-girls Catholic school for 12 years, so I vividly remember this one assembly. We had one girl in our grade had Tourette's syndrome, and like it was never addressed. She had these tics, and she was like she wasn't very popular. People made fun of her. And then we had this like dedicated assembly where she kind of went up, shared like what her thing was. And then a couple of the really popular girls like raised their hand and were like, I just want to let you know, I think it's so brave that you were able to come forward and like share your experience. And just by seeing like people who were popular, kind of like, to be kind is now a cool thing. It's made such a big influence. And also just to have that community building, now you feel like, well, she's a part of our tribe, so like we have to protect her. And I think to have that only come in like through a traveling, person, kind of like speaker every few months or maybe even once a year, I feel like it needs to be more regular than that, because the thing is we do slip back. It's like with any inclination, you slip back into like maybe not your best way of operating. And I don't know. I do remember it being just so powerful though. And then also like I think shame comes from feeling like you are alone and you're isolated and like I was one of 5, but I was the oldest girl and I was bossy AF, and I was I'm sure there would be girls in middle school being like, I was personally victimized by Aurora Culpo, and like I remember feeling like, but like I was also isolated too, because people are like, I don't know, everybody feels isolated in their own kind of weird way, and I remember feeling shame about that. But like if I felt not alone and if I felt like I was seen and like forgiven, I probably would have been able to like brush it off more and not perpetuate. Like it's hard. It's such a hard thing, but like that needs to be more important than like learning our
totally.
ABCs.
Growing up, I always said like, before, I feel like now mental health and these conversations are important to schools. When we started Kind Campaign, there was literally nothing that was addressing anything close to this, and now it's rare that we walk into a school and don't see like banners in the hallways that say like, this is a no bullying zone. Here's who you go to if you need help or support. Or
well, now suicides are happening at 9 years old. Like that was not a thing before.
Exactly. No. So schools are feeling motivated to like support their students way more than when we started, which is such a positive side to all of this. But yeah, I think just you're so right. Creating those spaces are so important where, you are learning about yourself and just like what it's like to be a human being rather than like science and math all day. And I think for us, like we get all the girls in the school to come together, female identifying as well, to come to the gym or come to the library and sit there for almost 2 hours, and they don't have their phones and they're just looking at each other and talking about their experience. It's something that they just, especially this generation who's like this all day, it's such a unique experience that a lot of them have really never had before.
Right.
And like you said, knowing that you're not alone or you're not the only one is so powerful. Going back to the kind apology, I think for me, that's my favorite part of the entire assembly, just because every single person sitting there is writing something at the same time. They're all looking around realizing like, oh wow, everyone's kind of done something that they feel bad about, and so I feel like they feel so much more encouraged to participate because they're not being called out. They're all doing it together.
Is there ever a girl who's like, I've never been mean, I'm so kind and nice?
No.
No?
It's pretty great. Amazing. Like they get so jacked on like
being vulnerable
a part of
school.
Being a part of something better. And
I think because they're all in there together. Yeah. Like you were saying, it has created this space where they're all like, they're a group like unified in a way that they've never been before.
Right. Exactly. It's like this kind of summer camp feeling. Yeah. One of my favorite things is when we finish an assembly and we watch like one specific girl walk out with like 12 apology cards, and you just know that like this specific person for whatever reason has been targeted, and we see those sort of moments a lot. And it is important to us, like you said, for it to not burn out and like all of a sudden we're back to just everything the way it was. So we pretty early on in starting Kind Campaign, we wrote a 19-week Kind Club curriculum. And so that a lot of schools adopt that after the assembly so that they can kind of continue the conversation throughout the rest of the school
really
year.
cool.
Yeah.
So I know you guys are both moms. Molly has 4 children, which in my opinion is way too many. And Lauren has 2. What do you guys do as parents to educate your children on bullying?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's been interesting, obviously having done the work that we do for so long before becoming moms ourselves, and then continuing the work that we do like throughout. I remember when I was pregnant with Lila,
first,
and Lauren was
so
pregnant with Story, and we were like on tour and like looking out at this room of girls, knowing like one day our own daughters will be sitting in a room, like this, hopefully having conversations like this, or if not that, like going through the experiences that some of these girls are going through, which really just like hit in a different way than always we've had love for the people that we've been talking to, but it just like became even more personal, and so it's something that has been on our mind as our daughters are getting older, and something that we talk about a lot is just like, okay, how do you have those conversations, because we have witnessed how important it is for that conversation to take place in the home and like to be examples of kindness, even when like you don't know that your kids are listening or watching to you, but like even in the car, like on the phone, like they hear everything. They're such little sponges, and we've seen that play out like watching girls interact and like then meeting the parents, after the assembly and being like, oh okay, so like that's where you're learning certain behaviors from, or hearing from faculty. Often we'll hear stories about things that are going on within the school, and they'll kind of explain some of the dynamics, and you just see how much of an impact the environment at home has on what they're learning, because it's what, like, yes, they see things portrayed in media. They, depending on how old they are, like they're on their phones, they hear about, relationships and how to interact, but like they see how their parents interact, and they look and strive to model that the most. And so recognizing just like the power that parents have to really model positive, kind, respectful behavior, and then furthering that, like have conversations with their kids about what's going on at school, or about things that maybe happened to you when you were younger. That's something that we've talked about a lot, is like how excited we are someday to be able to talk to Lila and Story about like what we experienced, in middle school or in high school.
I feel like my kids love to hear about when I was little, because they're like, whoa, you were a kid.
Yes, exactly. You're like, you're relating to them in a different way, because you're like humanizing yourself, we're their parents. And so they look to us like, oh, like they've never,
and storytelling is so powerful.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy, because I feel like I just had a light bulb moment. My daughter's 4, and she's straight up like, she has one friend that she's obsessed with. She's like a one friend girl. But this friend has another friend. I call her Lindy. And Soleil, my daughter, every time she goes to school, she's like, when Lindy is not in school, she comes home, she's like, Mom, I don't think she's in her class anymore. I'm so excited. Like, she's gone, because she wants to isolate that one friend and make her only for her. And I'm realizing like she does that at home too, because I have 2 kids, and she wants me to herself. And she feels like competition with her brother. Yeah. So I feel like I need to give her more individual attention and like make little just dates for her, because she feels this inclination to have somebody just for herself. It's crazy how it comes up so early.
I know. It's last year, so my daughter's in 1st grade now, and last year in kindergarten, her teacher walked up to me, and I could kind of sense, because I was like volunteering in class and getting to know the girls, and I was like, there is a whole thing going on with the girls in kindergarten right now. And she was like, can you do a Kind Campaign assembly for the class? And I was like, wow. And first of all, it was such a trip to be standing there and doing a Kind Campaign assembly 15 years after having started this in my daughter's class. But then, to just see how early it starts and how applicable it was for these 5-year-olds.
What did they say? I bet the stories were so funny.
So it was just the class. It was the girls and the boys. And with a kindergarten class, we changed it so much, because they're not like writing and reading yet.
Right.
And like it was a very different, like, just like a more I don't know, little kid friendly experience.
Like, how does it feel when somebody's not
so
being
they weren't
nice?
like sharing their story. Well, actually,
I was gonna say, no, they were pretty vocal.
They were pretty vocal. They were.
The emotions were definitely there.
They were experiencing
it was all
things.
happening,
and they were actually really taking a moment to like share during the kind card and kind pledge, we give them the opportunity if they want to share in front of the class, and so they were talking about. I think, did someone apologize in front of the class?
Someone
or like said like, I'm
apologized.
sorry I didn't like include you. Just like, very simply put, but these are huge moments for a little kid.
Just to say
Well, and so much
sorry and know that
bravery.
like you're not, just because you did one mean thing to somebody one time, you're not a mean person for the rest of your
Right,
life.
that doesn't define you.
Of course. But yeah, it's wild how young it starts. I'm very much in the midst of having these conversations with my daughter and about like, wanting to sit with certain people at lunch, but feeling like she has to sit with someone, or just like all these like strange dynamics that I'm like, wow,
That don't go away, by the way.
Yeah,
Like even when you're an adult, it's like,
totally.
oh, I can't go to dinner with these two and not bring this girl because then she's going to feel left out. And in a way, we do need to be considering how our actions affect other people's feelings, but not to such an extent where we're, bending over backwards to try to like
I
make
was just
everybody
gonna
happy.
say that. Totally.
That's
Like
such
a
a
big
hard-
part of this is also, and especially as like women and girls, like I feel like so often it's expected of us to be kind and do everything right and like, and to like be friends with everyone.
Right.
It's and actually a big part of Kind Campaign is letting them know like you don't have to be best friends with everyone, or if there's a friendship that hurts and just like isn't working, it's okay to walk away. It's okay to break up with a friend.
Right.
That it's such a hard thing to do. 'Cause it's like so obvious and socially acceptable to like break up with someone that you're in a romantic relationship.
Right.
But sometimes you do need to break up with a friend, but that it's not about like creating drama and talking about each other. It's like there are so many people in the world and some personalities just don't mix.
Right.
And that's okay. Like it doesn't mean that either of you was right or wrong. It's like it's just not
Yeah.
it's just not right. And so
Right.
go your separate ways. And so that's a big part of it, is like also listening to your gut and your heart
Yeah.
and like finding your voice in these situations as well. And standing up, trying to stand up for yourself, even though that can be hard in the
Right.
moment, especially when you're young. I think that's why like these kind of letter writing activities we do with them, they respond so well too, because it doesn't force them to like stand in, even though we encourage them to like have conversations, communicate with each other. But that is scary sometimes, especially at that age. So, putting pen to paper, which, for a lot of them, again, they've never really done other than like texting.
Right. Which I want to ask about, because I feel like it is so powerful to write somebody something, because you're not having to say it to their face, and I assume these letters are not anonymous.
Yeah, they can be, but yeah, typically people are writing it. Well, they're always writing it to someone specific and saying who it's from.
I find I think it's a little dangerous when kids can think that they can write something to somebody without having to take responsibility for it and be seen and
Totally.
be known as the author of this. A lot of, even as an adult, I'm on social media, I get bullied all the time, but at least my brain is fully developed.
Exactly.
Sort of. So like, what do you recommend for parents in terms of technology and preventing those sorts of things from happening, like cyberbullying?
Yeah. I feel like that whole conversation is evolving and bubbling up so much right now. And thanks a lot to Jonathan, who wrote that book, The Anxious Generation.
Yeah.
Like, he's really kind of spearheading this movement right now to
I would
like
love to get him
create,
on the podcast.
Oh,
Where's
he's
he at?
amazing. He's unbelievable. Creating phone-free schools, and it's like it's hard because in this time we're all so used to that, and especially with the types of like emergency sort of things that we unfortunately deal with in schools in this country. Like a lot of parents might not be comfortable having their kid go to school without their phone, so maybe it's checking in like a baggie at the beginning of the day, or putting it in a bin in class. You can have your phone, but like it's not with you,
Right. Or maybe it's a phone where like you got two numbers on it and you're not allowed
yeah,
to call
like a light
anybody else.
phone, or just like a dumb phone. Basically, that's part of his kind of movement too, is encouraging those sort of phones, or not allowing teens, which I am fully on board with. I feel like this is so important and healthy, is creating like an age limit with social media. Like you shouldn't be on social until you're 14 or 15.
Yeah.
Like you said, until your brain has developed. Like imagine going through, it was so hard already when we were young. For me, like the extent of it was AIM, you know, it was
Oh
like
my God, yeah.
but still, like,
And
I
I
got
remember
bullied
being
through that.
obsessed with
Oh,
that.
it was like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Too obsessed with it. And
We
you know,
were, like,
I'm gonna
one
go
house
so
computer, and like
yeah,
we would fight over
you
times.
put
Like
your
we
like
need to get
away message
yes.
on. Like I still remember my away messages. I am going to say something really bold right now, but like I feel like okay, public schools require us to vaccinate our children because of the spread of disease. You know, it's
Yeah.
like I feel like bullying from technology is much more of a threat to our children than smallpox and
Yeah,
you know.
agreed.
We should not be allowing our children to have technology.
No.
I mean, if we can make vaccines like mandatory in public schools, then it
Yeah.
should be mandatory
Yeah.
to not have technology because of the direct correlation to all these harmful effects, like
Absolutely.
including suicide,
Totally.
at rates that we've never seen before.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
are directly, you know, they come back and it's
Directly
like,
related.
This is why.
Like we
Yeah.
have the text.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
I can't imagine going through puberty and like just that time that's like middle school, like the worst time in your life, and then with all of these spaces that you're just like watching parties happen without you and anonymous accounts like coming after you. It's like it's crazy. And I always say too, it's so easy for people to kind of point the finger at younger kids and be like, oh, they're like out of touch or they're like always on their phones or whatever. And I'm like, they're just a victim to the devices and the spaces that like millennials plus invented for them. They're like just drowning in this space that we made.
Oh yeah.
And adults don't even know how to interact.
And
in
I
it.
would
So,
go so
like,
far as to say like the baby in vitro is now getting like that. They have all of our DNA. Like this, they're not wired the way we were wired. They're
No, it's a
wired
different-
for a world of technology.
it's a different human now.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, all of our babies knew how to like swipe up when they were like 8 months old.
Because
What
it's,
is
like,
cool,
on-
though?
You know, they see us doing it, and so
Yeah.
it's like again, like sponges. They see it. They're
Totally.
like, this motion's going to do something.
There's
which is
also
wild.
like two things happening though, where there's like a pushback from younger kids as well, which I've been like waiting, and we would always talk about like, God, I hope there's like a swing back.
go back the
We're
other way.
like in this very unique blip of time in human history where it's like this completely new experience. We're all learning how to deal with it, and like kids are like they're like using a filter is like not cool, or
Yeah.
like the number one Christmas gift that kids asked for this year was a digital camera. That was like the number
there
one
is.
thing.
I think there is
So,
a swing back happening
for sure. Like my husband is the youngest of 5. We have like 30. I have like so many nieces and nephews, like 20 or 30 of them. Anyway, most of them like from that specific age group they're actually like so cool. Like I'm like you're way
Which
cool.
age group?
Like I'd say like right now they're like 17.
Okay.
Like 16 to 18.
Oh,
like
so
that.
they had to do like pandemic homework.
Yeah,
like they were.
but they're like, I don't know. They feel actually more engaged than I would think, and like I think they're like craving something more real, but they were like brought up in something that was so like different from our childhood.
Yeah.
So there's like also that happening, which is interesting.
That
and, like,
is
we
interesting.
We see that in schools
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, like I don't know, on Instagram alone, I feel like I see like, you know, the owner of McDonald's would never touch his own product. Like Steve Jobs
Yeah. Oh, I
didn't let
just
his
saw this.
kids
Yes.
like use
Yeah.
technology, and like all these people who like invent these amazing things, you know, which I do think technology, you know, is absolutely amazing and
Of course,
unbelievable,
yeah.
but like there's a flip side, and
Yeah.
the people who really understand these things
Right.
know that.
Yeah.
And I do think it's amazing that you're saying now, like kids who were brought up with so much access to technology are
Yeah.
now interested in things like grounding, like
Yeah.
putting their feet on
Yeah,
earth when you wake up in the
exactly.
morning.
Exactly.
You know, yeah, I have faith in humanity
Yeah,
that like
I know. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, and it is amazing, of course. But it's like you look at a car. I'm sure people, when cars were invented, they're like, "What? What is this thing? So dangerous." But yeah, that's why we like have to take a test and get a license to drive a car. Like there should be something, like
Some barrier to access for social media and technology.
Because it's great if you like are an adult and you want to, you know, start a company and share it or whatever. Like I mean, that's how we grew Kind Campaign was through social media. Yeah, kids should not have it. It's just
Yeah. Well, I think the other hard thing you know, aside from just like social media specifically, it's just like they're connected to whatever it is that they're experiencing at school. They're connected 24/7. And so I think back, you know, when I was in high school, it's like, okay, when I was there, like physically at the school, like that was, you know, it was just pure misery.
Right.
But at least I had like a brief moment in time where I got to go home.
Right.
And I got to just like not be present, not be surrounded by, even though, you know, at the time with whatever, I don't know, whatever phone was, you know, it was like I was getting, you
AOL.
know, AOL and like anonymous calls to my phone. And like there was some level of that, but not to the extreme that it is now, where it's like, you know, they're like completely still in that world, because even when they're at school, they're still in that world. Like they're still wondering what's going on social media, or like, you know, texting during class, and like connected in this like technology bubble that they constantly live in. Right. Even when, you know, whether they're at school or at home, there's no break. And so I feel like, I mean, I can't imagine how just like the wear and tear of that on someone's emotional capacity. Like I would imagine that is driving, you know, these kids who are like, I can't handle this anymore.
Yeah,
like
there's a
breaking
point.
They are pushed to the breaking point of like, I need a break. I can't handle this, because like we've talked about, even as adults, like, yes, our brains are developed, but like we can't handle it. Like,
it's a lot to take in what everybody is doing around the world all the time. And like, we're not meant to have to take apart all of that data. It's too much for our brains. I know it. Like I've had to with my son. Like there's an absolute no YouTube policy, no YouTube Kids, no YouTube any like quick videos like that. It's no, because he was having like physical shakes when I would take the iPad away from him.
It's like a full addiction. Yeah, it's the formula for those like YouTube specific videos is how. I was just talking to our friend Sam, who's like all into like kids science and all the things, and she was saying that in formulating a lot of those programs and videos, they would take a kid, show it to them, and the second they looked away, they would like make something loud or make something super bright. It's like it's an addictive. It's like a slot machine.
It's something that goes beyond just like being addicted to TV, like my mom used to say we were. It's like there's something deeper. Chemical happening to the point where like he would put the volume up super loud, and like and when I'd take it away, his mood would be he'd cry like I just took away his best friend.
Exactly.
So we do not do that anymore. And the good news is that the withdrawal period is super quick for kids. It was like one day and he forgot.
Couple days, exactly right.
And he forgot. And now we're like, we have a much happier boy. So I think kids also are so resilient. So having parents that are just like on it and really paying attention to them seems like the most valuable resource.
Oh, definitely. Well, and I think acknowledging, like you said, like the period of time where it was hard was so short. And I think that's what so many parents are nervous about, is like, what's going to happen? Like, you know, how am I going to get through this? It's like with anything, like with sleep training or whatever. It's like, yes, it's going to be hard for a minute, but the benefit of going through that hard thing is going to serve them and you and your whole family unit in such a positive way. And so it's just like, for anyone struggling, just bite the bullet. Just do it.
Well, what would you say to parents who are like, oh, I don't want my kid to be the only one who's not watching this show or having a phone at school? That sort of thing.
That's hard. And I think that's a part of like this whole bigger conversation is it's going to be easier if you're like on the same page as the other parents, like whatever that group is, like having kind of a consensus of like, okay, when are we going to allow social media? When are they getting a smartphone?
I had a friend of mine goes to her kids go to private school, and she kind of initiated this. It's only that classroom of the school. They like all had a pact, like we're not going to let our kids have an iPad or like have a certain thing. And I'm sure there's going to be pushback from some parents who are like, my kid is not susceptible to that. They're a genius. And be like, okay, well, how can we make this work? Everybody.
That's why I love the idea of just schools having just like a blanket policy. It's like everyone's in it together. There's nothing to
like what's
worry
the
about.
LAUSD just committed to that.
Oh, that's amazing.
Which is
and
I mean,
know,
huge
like,
because
I think
it's
the
such a huge
state of
district.
Florida just passed a law where like kids under 14 can't have social media, otherwise there's like a huge fine.
I love that LA and Florida are doing the same thing because it just goes to show you like this is a universal issue that we actually all care about.
Places.
We all care about kids.
It's like one of the only probably bipartisan issues that exists is like,
Totally.
this is dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were speaking at my high school a few years ago, and every time we do our assemblies, we'll kind of look out at the audience and like see a girl who's really, you can just tell, like going through something, and kind of know like, oh, we're probably going to be having a conversation after the assembly about whatever that is. And, you know, when you open up a space like this, it's such a vulnerable room. And so a lot of girls will come up to us after the assemblies and share about maybe not necessarily an experience with bullying, but maybe they were sexually assaulted or their parents are going through a divorce, or, you know, we've heard it all. And so this girl was so distraught. I kind of thought it was going to be something along those lines that maybe she was dealing with. And she walked right up to us after the assembly, and the root of what she was going through was that she had this group of girlfriends at school, and you know, she really felt like this was her crew, and I don't know, she didn't say specifically what had happened, but they just, you know, decided she was like out of the group, and you know, they were going to ostracize her, and that they had created this system where if she got like X amount of likes on her photos or new followers a day, then she was allowed to sit with them at lunch, and she was like allowed to come to the parties, and she was going to be acknowledged in the hallways. But if she didn't meet those numbers, then she was ghosted. And so she was telling us, which was such a vulnerable thing to share and so heartbreaking to picture, that she would go home and spend hours creating fake accounts to like her own photos and to follow herself so that she could like meet these numbers. And it's just like a perfect example of the energy and time that this space and like the way how messy it can be for kids like can take away from someone's childhood. You know, like when she could be studying or hanging out with friends or doing whatever she wants to do, that she's like spending, and she was so distraught. Like you could see how of course,
through
how traumatizing.
Tears is telling us these things.
And it's
because it's life or death. It's life or death to feel like you want to belong.
Yeah.
And like that's how we're wired to belong. And then like to put these standards to belonging that you actually cannot physically meet.
Right. And that has nothing to do with you or like your personality or who you are as a human.
And I'm sure no parent would think that their child is the one setting those you know,
exactly
rules for another kid. Oh my God, it's so complicated. But man, I'm glad that you guys have something in place at least to get the conversation started. And I mean, it's been going on for 15 years. What does the future of Kind Campaign look like?
Yeah. Well, 15 years, which is crazy. That's what we're celebrating this year. We are getting ready to go on our 27th, right? Yeah, we just finished our 26th Founders Tour. We're getting ready to go on our 27th Founders Tour this spring. And we'll be speaking in England, which we're really excited about.
I wonder if the bullying's different there, just with an accent, probably.
I know. Well, we were there. The last time we were there was in 2016, and we had that same question. We were like, okay, we've done America, we've done Canada. Like, you know, there are assemblies that happen all the time without the two of us, that happen all over the world through an assembly guide and everything that we like send to them and that they have, and teachers facilitate it. And so we know that this is prevalent, you know, everywhere. That's what the feedback that we've received. But we hadn't physically, you know, been in an assembly outside of North America. And so we were like, what like, is this gonna resonate? Like, how is this gonna land? And it was really interesting because I feel like in general, America, like we just talk about everything in America. Like we were just like letting it all, you know, here we are just, like chit-chatting about it all.
Yeah.
And initially, like they were definitely a bit more reserved.
Yeah.
But throughout the course of the, you know, almost 2-hour assembly, it was incredible to see how, given the opportunity to, you know, come up and share their kind pledges and, you know, talk about something that they're personally going to do to create change, or to come up and share their kind card and to, you know, call out someone who is supporting them, how excited they were to have that moment. And then, it, you know, through like witnessing the apologies being passed out, it was very apparent that it definitely, you know, still takes place. I think just in almost a more, at the time at least, it almost just seemed like it was a more underground thing. Like it wasn't.
It almost felt like how it felt when we started Kind Campaign. I remember we're like,
like
This
it
hasn't
took them
been
a
addressed
minute
here
to
yet.
see that
Yeah.
like, oh, we do all experience this.
Right.
Whereas
Talk
now
about
people
it.
are like, yes,
It's a little
bullying
more
happens.
of a reserved culture.
Yeah,
So it made
exactly.
sense. It
I've
made
heard that
sense.
just in
Yeah.
the dating world, men are like British women are a little bit more reserved up front, and that they like American women because they are like, we don't have as much of a filter, I think, initially. But then ultimately, we're all people. Once you get past that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like at the start of it, you know, they were like, I don't know if we're supposed to be talking about
Yeah.
the fact that we're all impacted by these things, that we all play a part.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it was like, oh my goodness, like this is what we've been going through.
Right.
And so it was really, really awesome and beautiful to give them an outlet to really have these deeper conversations.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we're excited to be back. And then we, over the last year, have really been revamping. Lauren mentioned our Kind Club curriculum. We have a Kind Ambassador program where anyone who's interested in volunteering for Kind Campaign, we have amazing ambassadors all over the world who basically take Kind Campaign programming into their local schools and community. And so we've been revamping kind of all of these programs because we're constantly on and off the road with our founders tours. It kind of came to a point where we were like, okay, we have these amazing programs in place, but you know, we wrote our curriculum almost 15 years ago. Like, let's do a revamp.
Can you do the curriculum with boys?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Kind Club curriculum. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, totally. A lot of the Kind Clubs
So do
are co-ed.
they usually? Oh, it is co-ed.
Well, we have this kind of framework, and we tell in the instructions, it's like you can adjust this however you want to, basically. So
I would think you'd want to separate, right?
yeah,
Have two
there's
different-
definitely Kind Clubs that are co-ed. There's definitely Kind Clubs that are just girls, or that separate them for the conversation. It just depends on
Right.
what the school wants to
Interesting.
do.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the Kind Club curriculum isn't as like, it's more just like broader life topics. It's not so specific as the assembly. So it's more just like a safe space for students to come together and just connect and kind of break down those walls that they feel in school.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Where
you.
can listeners find you just to learn more about?
Yeah, so
you guys are
on
up to?
social at Kind Campaign, and then if you're interested in booking an assembly, kindcampaign.com. There's a form there. It's super user friendly, really easy to set up. And like Molly mentioned, we have our founders tours where Molly and I specifically are going in and doing the assemblies, but like she said, there's Kind Campaign assemblies that happen throughout the whole school year, and we provide a school with a dashboard where that kind of like takes them step by step through the assembly, has the film, the activities. We wrote a script for the facilitator, so it's so easy to do.
That's so awesome. I'm
Yeah.
sure
Everything
I have
is free.
moms that-
Everything is free of charge.
Oh yeah.
Who pays for it?
Just
Well,
the
yeah.
fundraising we do.
Oh my God, that's
So
amazing.
yeah, all of our school programming is free, which is very unique to Kind Campaign.
That is, because I was thinking like, oh, well, I think LAUSD might pay for that, or like, you know, budgeting is always an
whether
issue.
it's Molly and I coming out, that's free as well. So yeah, we cover all of our own
Amazing.
costs.
I know I have moms out there who are thinking that their child needs it in their class. I mean, it just we know even from kindergarten, preschool, like there really is no age limit for this.
Well,
So.
our spring tour is booked for Molly and myself, but we're going to open, I'm not sure when this will air, but we're going to open our submission window for our founders tour for fall 2025, probably within the next few weeks.
Great.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yay. Well, thank you guys so much.
Yes,
It
thank
was
you.
so
It was
fun to
great
talk to
chatting.
you.